Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm giving my review of this guy right here, the Small HD Indy 7, and it comes with red KOMODO control, which is awesome. Now, with this monitor, I've had a bit of a love-hate relationship with it. And the reason why, it's not how the monitor functions itself necessarily, but the issue is that I actually got a defective monitor. And so there's this issue that happens with the monitor that I got where right along the side of the screen, for some reason, it seems to display somewhere in the middle of the screen. It's almost like it takes a little sample, a little sliver from the center of the screen, and instead kind of replicates that right on the edge of one of the sides, which isn't the biggest deal in the world. Like you can get away with that for most things. Like everything functions correctly on the monitor as far as being able to, adjust controls or being able to have peaking. Like for the most part, the image is displayed correctly. However, it's just that little sliver along the side of the screen that is off, which kind of sucks. You pay, American, it's about, $1,500 or, $1,400 for this. So Canadian, that's more around $2,000. And so you pay that money for a monitor, you get it in the mail, and then it just doesn't quite function properly. I ordered this monitor from B&H, which they're a great company, and I had to get it off of B&H because I live in Canada, and unfortunately there's not a lot of retailers that actually sell the Indy 7 in Canada, and so I had to actually buy it from a company that is from the States and had it shipped here and paid duties and taxes and all of that. And so obviously that adds up to more than if you bought it from the country you're residing in. But with that, it also takes a longer shipping time. And so the issue that I ran into is I contacted customer support about this monitor to see if there was something that we could do. And they said that, they'd be willing to do an exchange. So if I sent them my defective monitor, then they would then send back a monitor that, functions properly. The issue with that is I have tons of corporate projects. For some reason, this happens to be the busiest month of the year for me. I have projects left, right, and center. And with the KOMODO, the screen that is on board is on top, and the image that you're seeing is this tiny little square. If you can see that, this is the monitor we have to work with, and you half that, and that's the screen real estate that you have to actually see your image. And when you're shooting 6K video, that's not great. You don't really want to base your decisions off of, that tiny little area and you barely can see what's going on. And so I would say for a professional context, using the onboard screen on the KOMODO, it doesn't cut it. And so I specifically got this monitor so that I would be able to, have something more professional for the shoots coming up. And so it kind of defeats the purpose of getting this monitor if I don't actually have it for, the busiest month of the year for me and some really, really big projects that I have coming up. And so, if I send it away and it finally gets delivered at their facility, they check, make sure it's defective, all that, they send me back a new monitor. After that, 2 weeks goes by and there's a ton of projects that I have within that time span that I am down a monitor for. And for me, I specifically got this monitor for the red KOMODO. So I don't have any pre-existing monitors that I own. I only needed to get a monitor because of purchasing the KOMODO. And so there's nothing that I could fall back on. There's nothing I could use, as a placeholder. In the meantime, I would only have the onboard screen to use for these professional projects, which again, just doesn't cut it, especially just positioning wise of it, having it on top of the camera. It makes it very challenging. You can't get all the shots that you want, all the different angles you need. When you're using it on a gimbal, it makes it very challenging. You have the gimbal in front of you. You can't be peering on top as you're trying to get moving shots. Like it doesn't work. And so you need a monitor to be able to use. And so I'm in this weird conundrum where I was actually hesitant to make this video for a while because I knew that it was defective. I wasn't sure if I was gonna send it back or not. So I'm gonna review it despite that defect and just try to, look past that, because I acknowledge that I got a defective unit. That's not gonna be every single unit that shipped. It just happened to be mine. And so I'm gonna focus on everything else that the monitor does rather than focusing on the issue that I ran into. Let's start with the bad so that we can end on a good note. And there's actually not a long list of things that I don't like about this monitor, so this should be quick and easy. So the first thing is that when you are looking to find the battery level for the monitor itself, you have to kind of like scroll up into the menu system, and then from there it'll display how much battery is left. I wish that there's just a way to see what the battery level was for the monitor regularly on the screen. You have that display for the camera's battery level, which I love and is really, really useful. But I wonder, like, could you not just add a second battery display beside it, where you could just have the actual levels for the monitor itself as well, so that you could just see all your battery levels in one place? I don't know why they didn't do that, if there's a technical reason why they can't do that. I don't know, but from my user experience, I feel like that would be a better way to display it. And then, you know, at one glance at the monitor, you could just tell right away, okay, my red Komodo needs to have, you know, the second battery switched out, and my first battery on the Indie needs to be switched out as well. Like you could see that right away, and it would just be a way better user experience, in my opinion. The second thing is that I wish that you could apply monitor effects on top of the red Komodo control. So the way that this kind of works with the Indy 7 is that regularly, like, you have different display pages that you can add effects to. So like, for example, you could add, you know, focus settings on one page. So you would have like focus peaking, or, you know, just different tools to do with pulling focus. On another page, you could add different effects that are to do with exposure. So you could add false color, you could add a histogram, you could add a waveform, these different tools that help you kind of pull exposure. And you can flip between these different screens, which is great, and that's awesome. And you can also just even have, you know, your custom display page that you know, just add a waveform to, and with, you know, a couple button presses, you can remove it and add it to the page, or rather hide and display it from the page. But the red Komodo control acts as a separate page. So at the very end, you'll kind of scroll over and hit your red Komodo control page. Now, for some reason, with that control page, you can't actually add those effects that the monitor typically would let you display over top of your image, such as a waveform, which for me is a little annoying. I don't know why you're not able to do that just over top of the Komodo control page. I think for me, that's something that I would personally use a lot. I like just having one page where I don't have to flip between a lot of screens all the time. But what would be useful is if, you know, I could go up to the, you know, top left of the screen and push a button and, you know, show a waveform or hide a waveform really quickly as I'm working and pulling exposure for a specific interview or what have you. All in all, I don't have a lot of gripes with this display. I think it's actually a really, really great unit. There's just a couple quirks that, you know, I thought, hey, if they have a firmware update that they can tweak some of those things, I would really appreciate it, and I think I would use those, you know, settings a lot. So let's move on to the good things about this monitor. First thing is the size. Having a 7-inch display is amazing. I never really knew what that was like before. I was shooting on DSLRs and I would just use, you know, the flip LCD screen, which is fine and great. And I think there's something really valuable about learning to get a good image, even using displays like that. But I'll tell you, when you upgrade to something like this, when you have a nice 7-inch display, you can, you know, see your image a lot bigger. You can see the details. You can, you know, pull focus a lot easier. There's just a lot going on that really, really has helped me in getting better images and just being able to see some of the things a little bit more clear within my image, which in turn actually leads to getting a better shot. You're able to, you know, see that little item that was left on a desk that you never would have noticed with a smaller display. Just stuff like that. It actually makes a huge difference, even though it sounds like a little thing. And pulling focus again, especially with a 6K camera, focus is crucial. If you miss focus on 6K, you notice. And so for me, I found that it's really, really important to have that monitor to be able to, you know, not just utilize settings like peaking that come with the Komodo, but also just be able to see that detail and be able to know closer to what it will look like when you pull it up on your laptop or your desktop display. Second is the brightness on this display. It has 1,000 nits of brightness, which is incredible for when you're shooting outside in harsh sunlight. I've done a bunch of shoots now where I have been out in harsh daylight, and it's been great being able to actually see what's going on. When I was shooting on DSLRs with LCD screens that, just come stock with the camera, you lose that pretty much right away. You step outside on a bright day and good luck pulling your exposure or figuring your exposure out, or even pulling focus. Like, it's just so hard to see what's going on and to see your image. You really do have to rely on all the other tools, which is great practice as well. Like, you should be using your histogram to pull exposure or your waveform. You should be using focus peaking if you have it available. These things are really helpful tools, but it does make a huge difference when you can actually see the image, and you're not just having to rely on numbers on your screen or a graph on your screen, but you can actually see the detail in that image and not just have to guess. Third is the red Komodo control. I would not have got this monitor if it did not have a red Komodo control. For me, getting a monitor, it's very annoying if you aren't able to adjust settings such as, your frame rate or your aperture or your shutter speed or, what record format you're in. These are all things that you can adjust on the Indy 7 because it has that red Komodo control. And so I find that very rarely am I actually adjusting settings on the Komodo itself. I usually just adjust all those settings through the monitor, which is incredible. It's a bigger display, it's a better display. The touch screen is a lot better than the Komodo, in my opinion. And so it just makes the user experience a lot more enjoyable, and it's a lot easier to work fast when you need to. I would say that there's a couple settings that I still do use on the Komodo itself, such as the exposure settings. So I'll often go and use false color on the Komodo over using false color on the display, just because it's fast. You can have it displayed on the monitor, but then quickly, like on the Komodo, it takes 2 buttons and you have false color, and it's pretty easy to do. So I do find myself kind of opting to go that route than loading that up on the monitor itself. Focus peaking is another one that I found I just end up using on the camera as well. It's very easy to toggle on and off on the Komodo. And so I find myself just adding that on the Komodo, and it does show up on the red Komodo control on the Indy 7. So you can see your focus peaking, you can see your false color, all of that when that's adjusted in the camera. Also adding LUTs. I don't really use LUTs, even though you can upload them to the Indy 7. What I do is actually under the red Komodo menu settings, you can actually add an output color space for your display, for your monitor. So for me, I just switched that to Rec 709, and then it's a lot easier than, bringing in a Rec 709 red approved LUT to your monitor and then displaying it through the monitor. Like, it's all built into the camera, might as well just utilize that. Thirdly is the fact that this monitor has both HDMI and SDI. Since I own the Komodo, I would not have purchased this monitor if it did not have SDI, because the Komodo only has SDI out. Now, not all monitors have SDI, a lot of them just have HDMI, and so I find that this monitor is great because not only can I use it for my Komodo, but if I am for some reason shooting on one of my GH5s, I can hook up the HDMI to this monitor and use this on one of my GH5s as well. So it just makes it a lot more versatile, and you can use it on a lot more cameras and in a lot more situations. It also has, SDI out and HDMI out, and so if you wanted to, for some reason, hook up another display going out of this monitor, you could do that as well. Number 4 is the battery life. I know that I mentioned before that it's a bit annoying that the monitor does not show the battery level for the display very easily. You kind of have to, find it through a bit of a convoluted method. It's not just displayed normally on your default screen. But I would say that in shoots that I've done with this setup so far, I've never run out of battery. And so even though I can't really see the battery display level, I've never actually had to worry about it. And that's coming from, I shot a 10-hour plus wedding the other week, and this thing, I didn't have to switch batteries at all throughout it. And I basically left my setup on for a lot of the day. There obviously were times where it was off, when we didn't need to be getting stuff, when we were traveling. But whenever, I was at a location, there were shots to get, I would just leave both my Komodo and the display on the whole time. Since the Komodo has a 30-second boot time when you're shooting a wedding, I found that I pretty much just had to leave the camera on so that you can catch moments immediately when you need to, instead of having to wait 30 seconds and be like, oh, can you hold on and not have the first kiss right now? Just give me a bit. My camera's booting up. Like, that's not going to go well. And so it just was easier to leave it on and just leave it running. And with that said, like, the camera, I did have to switch batteries quite a few times. But with the monitor, I literally did not change a single battery, and it was fine the whole day. So those are some of the negatives and positives that I found with this monitor. Honestly, all in all, I'm a really big fan of this monitor. Unfortunately, I had a negative experience with it coming with a defect, but that defect aside, I think it functions great. I think it's very intuitive. I think it's beautiful how the Komodo and the monitor speak to each other, and having that red Komodo control has been, it just works, and it's a breeze, and I've never had to worry about, you know, things glitching or not working properly. Every time I've used this setup, it's just worked seamlessly, and I've had no complaints. And so would highly recommend it. Just take with a grain of salt my experience with, you know, coming with a defect. I'm still not sure exactly what I'm gonna do to solve that. If I'm gonna send it back and just, you know, bite the bullet and not have a monitor for a few weeks, or I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll buy a new one and see if I can resell it even with a defect. I don't know. If you have suggestions as to what I should do, leave a comment. I would love to hear your feedback on that. But in the meantime, hopefully this video was helpful to learn a little bit about the monitor itself and see if it's something that you want to purchase, or maybe just gives you an idea of, you know, something, a different setup that you would have with the red Komodo with a different monitor. I don't know. But whatever the case is, hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully you gained something from this video. And if you did, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, give a like on the video. I would really, really appreciate it. That just helps me to know that you want to see more content like this. And if there's any specific content that you want to see, go ahead, leave a comment, and I will try my best to make videos that are along the lines of what you want to watch and what will be helpful to you. And so thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.